أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I'd like to welcome all of you to our first webinar by the Islamic Social Services Association of the USA. This is our first webinar specifically on the topic of Zakat and Sadaqa distribution to individuals on the local level. And we are so honored to have all of you join us today. Inshallah, we can begin by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha so that Allah may guide us, inshallah, on the right way. Bismillah, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, most gracious, most merciful. Maliki yawmiddin, master of the day of judgment. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. Thee do we worship and thine aid we seek. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Show us the straight way. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. The way of those on whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, those whose portion is not wrath and who go not astray. Ameen. I would like to start by asking our president, Dr. Anisa Nadir, to welcome you all on behalf of ISSA.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Shema. And thank you all for being with us, those of you who are with us live and those who will see the recording in the future. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I serve as the president of the Islamic Social Services Association, USA. ISSA-USA is now about 23 years old, started all those years ago, and it was founded in Virginia as a USA and Canadian organization, actually. And after 2003 became two separate organizations. So we have our sister organization in Canada, ISSA Canada, and in Arizona is the headquarters for ISSA-USA. So ISSA-USA is a nonprofit organization. It is a network of Muslims in the human services, both professionals and those who are volunteers, those who are students in the fields. And we are focused on providing education and advocacy regarding social services and mental health. There are a number of issues of concern. Certainly, when the organization was founded, we were at a place where our community still had not recognized that social issues were going to be a concern. And many had what we call their head in the, took an ostrich head in the sand kind of an approach. But 4 sisters initiated and over 100 supported that effort to move forward and develop an organization that would kind of be the voice for and a trailblazer. Actually, it turns out a trailblazer when it comes to addressing social service and mental health issues. And so from that, we have, alhamdulillah, have many other organizations been developed since then. And we are now, I'm so very grateful that we are now moving forward and bringing more and more on board to address these critical issues. And so I'm very excited about this topic, and I'm very happy to welcome Shema on board as our newest ISSA board member. So old will be new again. Alhamdulillah. And she certainly has taken a leadership role in terms of this particular webinar. And we're looking forward to addressing this as human service professionals, as volunteers, and as those who really are concerned about the financial well-being, as well as the social and mental health well-being of our community. So inshallah, I hope that was helpful. And I'm certainly going to be available for questions. So if you have other questions about ISSA and the programs that we provide, this is just one of many. So inshallah, I'll turn it back over to you, Shema.
Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Anisa. I would like to start by just giving an overview of the program for the next 2 hours or so. So what we're hoping to do is we have three very cherished panelists joining us today who I'd like to introduce in the next minute. And after that, we want to open the floor up to all of our local providers across the USA. How are things in your area based on what you've heard from the panelists? What questions do you have? And what we're hoping to do is to be able to send this finalized recording to you in the next few days, as well as have a report based on all the best practices that were brought up together today. And hopefully today will be the beginning of a new kind of coordination and assistance that we can all provide to each other. So inshallah, our first panelist, I'll just introduce all three, then I'll pass it on to Dr. Bagby. So our first panelist is Dr. Ihsan Bagby, and he's a retired professor of Islamic studies at the University of Kentucky from 2002 to 2022. He has his PhD in Islamic studies from the University of Michigan in 1985, where his dissertation focused on Islamic legal theory and the issue of change in Islamic law. And his research for the past 30 years has been focused on the Muslim community in America, American mosque, and the African-American Muslim community. He's conducted 3 comprehensive studies of mosques in America in 2000, 2010, and just recently in 2020. And we'll be adding that link to his most recent one in the document that we'll be sending out. The first 2 surveys, it's also available online. The first 2 surveys resulted in 4 monographs and 7 articles in chapters and edited volumes, and 2 reports from the 2020 survey were produced in 2021. He served as the lead researcher for ISPU's Remaking Muslim Spaces, which led to the monograph, Creating the Welcoming, Inclusive, and Dynamic Mosque. From 2019 to 2021, he's produced 4 articles in referred journals on giving in mosques, mosque governance, Islamic approaches of masjid leaders, and African-American Muslim philanthropy. Presently, he's working on a book which intends to be an in-depth view of 5 mosques in America. He's also a board member of the Muslim Alliance of North America, MANA, a member of the Fiqh Council of North America, and chair of the SHARE Center, which is a social service center in Lexington, Kentucky. He's also a board member of Masjid Bilal in Lexington and a board member of CARE, Kentucky. Jazakumullah khair for joining us, Dr. Bagby.
You weren't supposed to read all of it.
I have to, mashallah. It's so, may Allah bless you for all of this work that you've done. We're looking forward to hearing from you today. I'll just ask Dr. Anisa to introduce our second panelist, and then we'll revert back to you.
So it is my pleasure to introduce Sister Frieda Muwakkil. Sister Frieda is a retired, hold on one second, actually, hold on. Everyone. I took my wrong notes. Okay. Sister Frieda Muwakkil is a retired nursing instructor and program director for Gateway Community College Nursing Department. She's a registered nurse and she received her nursing degree from Long Island University in New York. She also received her Master's of Education degree from Columbia University. Sister Frieda was the second woman to serve on the board of directors of the Islamic Community Center of Tempe in Arizona. And she also served on the Islamic Community Center of the Northeast Valley, which is in Scottsdale, Arizona. Sister Frieda served on the Board of Education of Noor Academy in Tempe, Arizona, and she also serves as an advisory board member to the Islamic Social Services Association USA. Auntie Frieda, as she is lovingly called, is an active member of the community. She has helped the community and served the community in a very variety of capacities, and we're very excited to have her with us today.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Anisa, and also that she has been in the Zakat committee for the past 10 years, mashallah, specifically in Tempe. Our third panelist is Sister Catherine Latifa Ziyad. And Sister Catherine is a founding member of the Muslim Center of Detroit, where she served many years as a volunteer in the capacity of soup kitchen cook, teacher for Sunday and Saturday Islamic school, and director for the Muslim Center's First Children's Choir. Currently, she serves as an Ashura board member and assists along with other social workers with addressing the needs of the Muslim Center families and others. She's been married for over 50 years to Brother Lawrence Ziyad, and they have 6 children, 2 daughters-in-law, and 11 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren, mashallah. And professionally, she's a MSW social worker and employed at Team Wellness Center as a compliance audit and monitoring manager. She's been past secretary of a Huda Clinic board, and she's still a board member there. She's an executive board member of the Michigan Muslim Community Council, and she's a co-facilitator of Muslima University at the Muslim Center in Detroit. She's an associate member of the League of Muslim Women, and she's been a previous member of the Clara Muhammad Foundation. She's a member of the National Associate of Black Social Workers and Greater Detroit Associate of Black Social Workers, as well as ISSA, Islamic Social Service Association. And she's compassionate about working with children and helping others to obtain a better quality of life, inshallah. May Allah bless all of our 3 panelists, and we're looking forward to hearing from you today. Dr. Bagby, I'd like to start with you. If you could give us kind of an overview of Zakat and Sadaqa as you see it in the masajid in America as you've done your studies.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I really must have a shout out to some of the faces I've known for a long time, Sister Dr. Anisa Nadir, and also Sister Amina Johnson, who I knew we were together in Ann Arbor at Michigan, University of Michigan. Sister Amina, that was 45 years ago. Yeah, it's been a long time. So alhamdulillah, I appreciate the opportunity. My main research is in the study of masajid. And in the 2020 study, we counted just under 2,800 masajid, and I'm sure that number is increasing. Our community is healthy. Our community is growing. Our community is growing in terms of not only numbers, but also wealth. More and more purpose-built masajid are being built. So, and immigration and conversion should continue. And so our community, in at least the short run, in the next decades, will be a growing, healthy community. Of course, there are dark clouds, but overall, the headline is the health of our community. In our 2020 study, 92% of all masjids collect and distribute zakat. It's interesting that that number is slightly going down from 2000, about 98 to 95 in 2010, and now 92. Some of the people at the masjid say, well, we don't handle zakat. We have an organization in the city that handles it. So anybody who comes, we just tell them to go there. We don't want the headache. And I think most masjids would say it is a headache for various reasons. And in a sense, we want to make it less of a headache and something of a fulfillment, a sense of fulfillment that we are truly helping people. However, in one study of 3 masjids, I found in interviewing people and how they give, most Muslims do not give their zakat to their local masjid. Most Muslims, almost all of them, give the majority of their zakat money to other organizations, in particular relief organizations. In America, the relief organizations here are the most rich of all the Muslim organizations in America, by far. I mean, hands down. But you know what that means? That means the vast majority of our zakat money goes overseas. And that is not how it should be. There is a consensus of fuqaha across the board that zakat money should stay in your area. And we need to put pressure on relief organizations because, you know, relief organizations are doing a much better job, by the way, but still a small percentage of their money stays here in America. And that needs to change. One of the assignments for this discussion was to review the eligibility for people to receive zakat. And I don't consider myself an expert on this issue. And the faqih, the sheikh that I look to the most for answers and directions is Sheikh Dr. Yusuf Qaradawi. I think he, of our age, is the greatest sheikh that we have. I love his approach. He's not a muqallid. He looks at all the madhahib, he looks at all the opinions, and he takes into consideration the purposes of the law. And if anything, that's my advocacy, that we always look to the purpose of the revelation. What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to achieve? Why? So I follow him. So most of these ideas are coming from him. So there are 8 categories, right? The first 2, al-fuqara wal-masakin, often translated the poor and the needy. And there's all type of discussion about definition, and is no use for a fiqh committee to, from my point of view, to try to settle that very diverse debate, because it really doesn't matter when it comes down to who is eligible for zakat. It really doesn't matter if you consider them faqih or miskin. There are 2 views of who is eligible among fuqara and masakin to receive zakat. There's a restricted view and there's an expanded view. The restricted view, which is mainly the Hanafis in general promote this, is that zakat is only eligible for those who owe less than nisab. So if they're not eligible to pay zakat, then automatically they're eligible to receive zakat. But if they are eligible to pay zakat, they cannot receive zakat. The expanded view does not look to nisab. And actually, this is the majority view. The majority view has a flexible, that zakat is paid to those whose assets and or income are insufficient to satisfy their essential needs as defined by their society, regardless of nisab, okay? The focus is on, therefore, the total financial picture of the individual and a focus on the needs of the particular person, right? An-Nawawi, and by the way, the Shafis in general are the champions of this view. An-Nawawi in his Al-Majmu' says zakat is given to remove persons from poverty to sufficiency. And I think we miss this. You know, we look so much, and of course, we're often inundated with, as Sister Nadia said, you know, as we were coming on, most Zakat committees worry about paying the light bill, and a person whose food stamps don't cover the monthly budget. But really, from this point of view, our job is to help people get on their feet. That's really should be the focus of Zakat. Al-Qaradawi concludes with this understanding. The purpose of Zakat is to provide an adequate, reasonable standard of living and to help Muslims remain above the level of poverty. So even Nawawi, for instance, gives examples. I'll give a few examples. And Nawawi, in the same passage, says, if a craftsman needs tools, that Zakat can be used to pay for tools and equipment so that he can make a living, right? He can establish something. He can establish his business. And, we can imagine people coming out of prisons or young people, going through training in junior college or something, and they come out and they don't have money for whatever, they require to practice this new trade. We should be there to help them, right? We should be sensitive to that. Another example that comes from the classical discussions, which is used to argue against nisab. So the example is a person who owns property that is zakatable, but that property does not provide income to sustain the person, to sustain their standard of living. In that case, that person can receive zakat. And some of the examples, to provide him with, date plants, or to provide him with whatever for the farm, or whatever, so that he can sustain himself. Example that just came up recently in my own community, a young man got a job at Toyota. Toyota has a gigantic plant here. So he's gonna make good money, but he didn't have a car. And he didn't come for zakat, but somebody heard about it and says, hey, this brother got a young brother, right? Just out of high school, got a nice job. He's going to be paid good, but he doesn't have a car, and Toyota is not close by. And anyway, so, we bought him a car, right? Not expensive, but, it's a good car. It wasn't cheap either, right? Not something that's going to fall apart after a few days. And so there are many other aspects. Qaradawi mentions zakat should be used to help people find jobs, should help students, scholarship for students, for even their maintenance. And also in the classical times to help people get married. This is a kind of a consensus, that they talk about this, how zakat should be used to help people get married. I don't know how that translates today. In some other Muslim societies, there's very clear standards, for finally getting married. Anyway, I'm just saying that we need to be flexible in understanding the standards we set, and we should be more focused on the ultimate purpose of zakat. Now, how much do we give? Just very briefly. There's a restricted view, again, which is mainly Hanafi, that you should give enough to sustain them for a day. And then there's argumentation of sustaining them for a year, and then even for a lifetime. Al-Ghazali, in his Ihya, takes the moderate view, and in his own words, a moderate approach, that you should give 1 year's sufficiency. Again, we need to be flexible in understanding what are we doing. Now, clearly, kind of footnotes to this, it's clear in my own view and my own assessment that suburban masjids have large zakat accounts. I've been studying one masjid, and their zakat account is about $30,000, which has unfortunately, remained about that amount. That money should not stay in the suburbs. I'm sorry, that, masjids that have sizable zakat should share that zakat with, in particular, inner city masjids. Also, there actually needs to be a coordination of zakat in any one area. Hopefully somebody will talk about that. Another footnote is that, zakat, if we're going to look at the total picture of a person, not just that one bill that needs to be paid, we should use zakat money to build the infrastructure to provide counseling, professional counseling for individuals, people who will help them find jobs, people will help them work through the issues of jobs and maintaining and how to, work with their finances. Anyway, let me continue. The third category is amilin, the people who administer zakat. I'm not going to talk about that. The fourth category is al-mu'allafa qulubahum, and that refers to those whose hearts are to be reconciled, to be brought close to Islam. And again, there's consensus that this refers to new Muslims or people who are considering Islam. And this is one zakat area that who gives a portion of the zakat to that? I haven't heard of anybody, but we definitely should. I mean, isn't dawah, isn't bringing people to Islam fundamental to what we're supposed to be about? A percentage of every masjid zakat should go to some kind of dawah, zakat dawah fund that provides money to new Muslims, help for new Muslims, that type of thing. For instance, Muslims just released from prison. I think they should automatically get some money, automatically get some help. And again, especially for this, a percentage needs to go to the inner city masajid, because let's face it, they are typically the ones that have the most converts. The fifth category, riqab, slaves, we won't talk about that. Al-gharibin, the debtors, which is something, of course, most of us know about and should always consider. I'm not going to talk about that. But the seventh category is one in which there is a debate, and that's fi sabilillah, in the path of Allah, in the cause of Allah. And again, there's a restricted view, and that actually is the consensus of the madhahib. And that restricted view, fi sabilillah is zakat money that only goes to military aspects of jihad. It does not go to any other category. The expanded view is found in a few individuals in the classical period, but mainly in the modern period, that fi sabilillah is something that should be beyond the military aspects of jihad. So Tabari, in his famous tafsir, of course, Tabari had his own method, by the way. He said spending to support, defend the religion. Fi sabilillah means spending zakat to support, defend the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and its way of life. Ar-Razi, the famous Shafi faqih, in his commentary of Quran, says that fi sabilillah zakat should not be restricted to jihad. It can be used for building masajid. It can be used, and listen to this, for supplying coffins, for paying for the burial of people. Qaradawi argues that fi sabilillah in the Quran is not used in the restricted sense of fighting, military aspects. Fi sabilillah is used in a very general sense of striving in the cause of Allah. So why would we restrict fi sabilillah when it comes to zakat only to military aspects? But he said it should be jihad, though. It should be jihad, meaning working to establish deen, to maintain deen, to protect deen, especially as most of the modern fuqaha say, especially in areas dominated by non-Muslims and kufr. So in that regard, fi sabilillah can be used for Islamic schools, for the building of masajid, and for other organizations that defend Muslims and so forth and so on. But clearly, I think, and I would really put this to ISSA, that there is a need for a national set of guidelines. By the way, Qaradawi concludes that there's no way to have an absolute guideline for zakat. Zakat is specific to particular circumstances, to the society that people live in. But there is a need, a national set of guidelines. And I think it is the job of the fuqaha, I would say the fiqh council, along with practitioners, people who have the experience of zakat, putting their heads together to come up with guidelines. But the guidelines have to be flexible, and they have to be focused on, to me, the ultimate purpose, which is helping people get out of poverty. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Bagby, for that. You've brought up a lot of really, really important questions that our communities have to answer, either as a collective in all of the US and also locally in our individual areas based on the needs of our local cities across the country. SubhanAllah. Inshallah, we would probably, everybody has a list of questions to ask Dr. Bagby. Inshallah, we'll be getting to that a bit later. Inshallah, for right now, I would like to now ask Auntie Frieda to enlighten us about a local example from Tempe, Arizona. She has the experience of over 10 years with the Zakat committee there. And we would be really interested, Sister Frieda, to understand, how did you all come about, how did the Zakat committee kind of evolve into what it is today in terms of the decisions you made? What is the very basic idea of how you, as Dr. Bagby said, how do you decide who in your community is needing the money that you have to offer, and how do you go about giving it? If you could also name some success story from your local area that can give us an idea of how your system works, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Now we can. Yes.
Oh, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
That was a very comprehensive presentation from Dr. Bagby. I'd like to thank him for that. I'm going to respond by first saying to Shema is that when you give little children directions, you have to tell them one thing at a time and let them do that. And then when they come back to you, you tell them what else you want them to do. Otherwise, they forget the first thing that you asked them to do. And older people are the same way. So all of what you asked me to do is like, okay, I might remember the last thing and not the first thing. So I'm just going to speak from my mind and ask you to have patience, inshallah. I'm not sure how I got on the Zakat committee, but I've been there so long that it has evolved in a lot of different ways. It started out.
Sorry, Auntie Frieda, for some reason, your voice again, I don't see you on mute, but I can't hear you. Auntie Frieda? I can't seem to
Focus.
hear you. Could you say? Yeah, now I can. Yeah, I don't know what
Okay.
happened.
I'm not sure either, but I was saying that it didn't quite start off as an entire committee. It started off with just a couple of people from the mess.
Sorry, Auntie Frieda, again, we can't hear you. Auntie Frieda? Oh, sorry. Just a moment. Auntie Frieda, we can't hear you. Just a moment.
Of the evolvement in
Hmm.
Tempe. You still can't hear me?
Now you're back, but for a moment there, we missed it. I don't know if what it could be caused
Yeah,
by.
I'm not sure either. My mic is on, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
why. But in any case, I think it would be better if we maybe started over. Ask me the first question because I've already forgotten the first.
Oh, sure. No, Auntie Frieda, we were just really interested to understand how the Tempe Masjid, because I think the usual ways that a masjid just works by itself in its local area. But I remember that when we talked, you mentioned how in the Tempe community, it has evolved into having a few different organizations work together. So if you could just explain how that came about.
Okay, so I'm not sure about how that part came about. Bahina would probably be better at saying how some of the other organizations got involved. What happened in Tempe was it started small with just people in our community. But what we found out over time is that masajids, even from other communities outside of the Tempe geographical area, were sending their people to Tempe. And, you know, I hate to say this, but in some of those communities, the only people that got zakat from them were people that they knew personally. So if you went there to get zakat, they would send you to Tempe because they only gave their zakat to their friends families. And that's a very unfortunate situation, but it's true. And I'm not speaking from hearsay, I'm speaking from what I know personally about some of the communities and why in Tempe, which is central in the Phoenix metropolitan area, we get people coming all the way from other communities like Glendale or Mesa and all over. And so, and you can't put restrictions on saying if somebody travels, for 30 minutes to get to the masjid to fill out an application, you can't tell them that they don't live in your area, and so you can't help them. So our masjid wound up helping everyone. And I have to say about the Tempe masjid is that, in my view, they've been very liberal in that regard. Initially, it wasn't, but when we saw the need increasing and the number of people that were coming to us from other areas, it was impossible to say that we were not going to help them. And as Dr. Bagby just mentioned, we even help non-Muslims. Non-Muslims come to us for help because their neighbors are Muslims and their neighbors send them to the masjid because we've helped their neighbors. And so the neighbors will say, if you go there, they will help you. And we had to struggle with that because initially we had this very restrictive view of who was eligible to receive zakat. And it got to be an enormous headache with saying only a woman who's a widow, and I'm exaggerating here, but only this person who's that. That didn't meet the criteria of many of the people who were coming to us. And so we had to, and I'm so glad Dr. Bagby spoke before me, because now I have all this terminology that I can use, that we have this expanded view that we can look at and say, for example, as you mentioned about a young man with a car. If a brother has a car and it breaks down, how's he going to get to work if we don't give him the money to fix his car? So the committee and its criteria, we had to go back and forth many times. Sister Bahina can attest to that, many times, to say, okay, this person, his car is broken down. How's he going to get to work? He has a wife who has a new baby and they got 2 other children. The rent is due, the water bill is due. They don't get enough food stamps. All of these things are due. We have to give him the money to fix his car so he can go to work. So the expansion came out of the need and constantly revising what we were doing. We constantly had to revise that. And I have to give some credit to our masjid. They constantly increased the amount of money that we needed, because we were running out of money long before the 30 days. They gave us enough money to work with for 30 days, and sometimes 15, 20, 12 days into the month, we're out of money. The masjid increased the amount of money that we received, and they kept increasing the amount until it made me nervous, because now it was, we have this money, and if somebody comes at the beginning of the month and they need $2,000, you're almost afraid to say, okay, we'll pay it, because we're at the beginning of the month. We don't know what's going to happen when we get to the middle. So it's a constant, what should I say? It's constantly, we're relying on Allah and we're relying on each other. And I have to say that I'm kind of a stickler for details. You know, when we get applications, sometimes I have to say, I don't understand what this means on this application. You have to ask this person what. And I'll give you an example. A person came recently and said that they were in the hospital for 4 months because they had a stroke. I said, no hospital in America keeps a person for 4 months that had a stroke. They either going to go to a rehab center or a nursing home. Find out where they were so we can make some intelligent decisions about what the person needs. So I kind of pick things apart sometimes. And there is a great need for case management, because a lot of these things, as Dr. Bagby mentioned, they need follow-up. They need people to help them figure out things. Yes, if we pay your light and your rent and your food for January, what are you going to do for February? And February is a very short month. March is right behind. So there's a lot of consideration. I mean, enormous consideration and an enormous need. We're seeing more need now. Alhamdulillah, we've been able to manage, but it's a tremendous responsibility. You know, may Allah help us to make the right decisions at the right time, because it is a tremendous need. The other thing we had to watch out for is fraud. The biggest fraud occurs in Ramadan. So if you're not familiar with that in your community, be aware. Everybody comes from everywhere during Ramadan, because they feel like people are more generous. There's going to be more money. I don't know what they think, but they certainly, it's like they come out of the woodwork. And you have to be very cautious about how you are using the believers' money, because you're not always helping people, you're enabling them. And so you have to look for these red flags of people. We had couples going around the community at one time. And this is what forced us to somewhat, we're not there yet, to somewhat help centralize what's going on in our community, because people were going from one masjid to another. The application process, I believe, is more centralized now than it was. And this is only because of the administrative staff in the Tempe Masjid began to push back on certain things and say, we've got to fix this problem, otherwise it's going to overwhelm us. And so alhamdulillah, some of those issues have been fixed. I shouldn't say some. We were at a meeting a couple of months ago, and unfortunately, I didn't get to hear all of it, but there is more centralization coming. The other thing I'd like to just tag on before I finish is that, let me just look at my notes here. You know, everybody thinks that you can centralize the whole Zakat process. You cannot. And I think Dr. Bagby just addressed that. We do need guidelines for the communities, but it's very difficult for every community to follow specifically. But if you have general guidelines, they can tailor it to their needs. And alhamdulillah, I feel it a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I'm able to be on this committee because it helps you realize also how blessed you are, how much Allah has given you, that you're not one of those people having to fill out that application, because it could be any of us at any period of time that has to ask for help. And there are people that don't know that I'm on the committee in our community, and they'll say certain things to me. And I said, we have a committee at the masjid. Why aren't you applying? There's also this, this embarrassment among the believers. I mean, after all, we're Muslims and we're better than everybody else, and we've got, you know, everything going for us, so we don't have to ask anybody. But there are people in dire need, and some don't know that they should ask. They don't know how to ask, and they don't know where to go. And that needs to be fixed in our community as well. Jazakallah khair for your time.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Frieda, for explaining that. I would be really curious to know a little bit more detail in terms of, mashallah, I mean, you've mentioned many challenges that you have in the process of deciding where and to whom and how much. Could you just give a brief idea of what are the kinds of things? You can't hear me?
Oh, I can't.
Can others? Oh, sorry, I don't know. Yeah, it's coming in and out. I was saying that, mashallah, jazakallah khair for the explanations you've given so far. I think it would be interesting to know a little bit more about how, like, what kinds of questions do you ask on your actual assessment process? And is it all done online? Or do you have like a in-person kind of interview? And in your assessment process, what kinds of things do you do to, I don't want to say detect fraud, but just understand really what is the situation going on so you can best help? You can elaborate a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to say, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, so we know how to detect fraud. That's number one. I'm kidding. You know, when you've been around this process for a period of time, you learn to spot certain things. You learn to see certain things, how applications are completed or not completed. We have, and I'm going to defer some of this to Sister Baina, only because I'm on the end of the application once it's already been obtained. I don't see, I mean, I get to look at it and see what is on there that I don't understand or that's incomplete. But the administrative staff are the ones who do the interviews, the people who walk in. You can now do it online, or you can just walk through the door and ask to fill out an application. So they have both. But I'm on the decision-making portion of that committee, not the portion that actually sees people as they come in, or to see that, to process the applications and make a decision whether this is going to the committee or not.
Okay, inshallah. Yeah, that's another really important point for so many of us, that it's never just one person making the decision. There's a whole committee involved. And if you can just speak to the last point that you mentioned about confidentiality, because on the one hand, you want to be able to get all the information needed and have a team of people. On the other hand, people are going through very difficult circumstances that, you know, there's always the challenge of gossip and people feeling shy that their problems will go out. So how do you balance being able to get the information you need with being confidential and respectful of the people asking?
Well, again, I'm not the one who makes the assessment of the application. So I'm just getting to see paper, and I think it's a function of who you ask to be on the committee. You have to ask people of integrity, people that will have the mindfulness not to discuss or disclose who comes in, who's asking. I think it's just a function of having people of integrity, and integrity is a word that I associate with, fearing Allah. We have to understand that if you're being asked to make an assessment about someone's need to receive something, you have to understand that the confidentiality on you is that you have to fear Allah about what it is you're doing.
Yes, Jazakallah khair. That's the main thing I think that's weighing on all of us to make decisions that are in line with Allah's wishes and Allah's guidance. Before I move on to Sister Catherine, I would like to just invite Sister Bayina, because I get the impression that you work directly with Sister Frieda in Tempe. Would you have anything else you'd like to add to what Sister Frieda mentioned about the Tempe arrangement?
Yes, assalamu alaikum. This has been really wonderful, and I'm glad that you invited me to speak on it. I've been working with ICC, which is the Islamic Community Center of Tempe, for about 4 years. I just kind of removed myself from it because it got to be a lot. But thank you, Sister Frieda, for what you gave, and everybody else. So the Zakat budget, first of all, for ICC is about $175,000 since COVID over the last 2 years, a year. Okay, and so it went from $5,000, as Sister Frieda mentioned, a month to $10,000, and then to $15,000 a month that we give. So we also, there's some success stories and some collaboration. We have an overview. We decided that there was a lot of fraud, like Sister Frieda mentioned, and so a lot of the messages got together and we formed this collaborative thing, and we have an open forum where a database where people who apply online, it goes to the database. So what we can do is look at the person when the application comes in, click on the database and see how many messages they applied to, what bills they uploaded, their ID, etc. And this has been really, really great for the last 2.5 years, because you can see fraud very, very easily there. And you can track people. So what we're trying to do actually is connect the frequent flyers, that's what we call them, who come in, because there's some people who know that they can apply every 3 months, right? So they literally wait, don't pay their rent. And then 3 months later, they come back and say, okay, I owe $3,800 for rent, help me. So we're beginning to see that this is a pattern, and obviously we don't want to do that. So we want to connect now people who constantly asked to some sort of reason why they're coming back. Why are they coming back? Is it lack of skills? Are you unemployed? If you're unemployed, maybe you need language classes. Maybe you need resume working. Maybe you need, to role play, how to interview for a job, how to keep a job, etc. So we're dealing with all these kinds of things, and we're trying to develop that. I'd like to say that the collaboration aspect was really helpful. There's one success story where this brother came with his family, and they just arrived from, I think, Syria or Saudi or something, and he didn't have the correct visa. He has 4 children, 3 of which are mentally disabled. That's a lot. That's a lot. And they came here, and because they don't have the ID, he didn't have any ID, he didn't have the correct visa, they needed a place to stay, and one that could accommodate the disabilities of his children. So he found a place through a Muslim, and that person wanted $2,800. They wanted the month, they wanted security, and a month ahead. It totaled like $11,000 that we needed to put up. Obviously, our masjid couldn't give him all that money. So we put it out to the other massages and the other people on the database, and everybody gave $1,600. We got the family in, and this is alhamdulillah. So this is a kind of example of, you know, collaborative action that we did to help people, because it was obvious that they needed it. It took like 3 or 4 weeks to find the place and to get the people and to get the money, and ICC coordinated collecting all the money and giving it, whatever. It is a big thing. But alhamdulillah, you know, we did that. Imam Bagby brought up that we should do zakat also, that zakat should go out to the community. This is something that our masjid also does. We are now 3rd year feeding the unsheltered of the Tempe community, along with another community group called the Aris Foundation. One of the Muslims gives water out to them, but every Tuesday they have, you know, a site, and about 300 homeless people come, and they have stations for hygiene. They have stations to help dogs. They have hair cutting. They have whatever. So once a month, we give the hot meal. We sponsor the hot meal for them. And they love it. They love it. We want that Muslim yellow rice and chicken, you know. So they obviously know when it's our week to do it, because the lines triple. And they're like, here you go. Yeah, salam alaikum, you know. It's kind of beautiful, because this is the kind of dawah we need in the community that help us over the years. Now we are known as people who are not only, you know, isolated in our own Islamic framework, but we help the community. We're also citizens. We also feel and have, you know, a stakehold in our own community. And this helps us, you know, we're doing voter anyway. So that, I just want to say some of that. I don't know if I answered a lot of your questions.
You did. Thank you so much, Sister Bayna and Sister Frieda. I feel like you've really given such a good role model of an expanded understanding of Zakat and Sadaqa and charity in general that communities can benefit from. And I think all of us will probably have some more questions for you as well as we go through on exactly how you manage that and the details. Inshallah, at this time, I would like to transfer on to Sister Catherine to share her experience from the Detroit community. And if you can draw any parallels between what our sisters in Tempe have said and to just how your community evolved to have the system it has today, and what challenges and advantages you see with your system, Sister Catherine.
Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I openly bear witness that there is no God except Allah, the one and only, and I openly bear witness that Muhammad is his last prophet of Allah. And I thank Allah Ta'ala for being with you all today. And for me, I just like to say, for me, it's a clarifying point. We all are social workers. Allah says, help your neighbors. That means all of us are social workers. There are things that we do. We may not have a professional title, and I'm sure all of you that's on today have helped somebody along the way. So that's so important to know. And I am a member of the Muslim Center of Detroit, a past member of the historical masjid Wali Muhammad in Detroit, came through the Nation of Islam. In the Nation of Islam, I was on that community committee that also helped to bury people. And so it has continued in my life as I get older or become more mature. So at the Muslim Center, we don't have a formal process, but what we do have is an imam that said we need to do something. And so about 15 years ago, we identified some of our members who are mentally ill. Yes, we're touched by all the ills in our community, and sometimes I think we forget about that. And that we need to have a crisis team. So throughout the Muslim Center, we identified social workers, professionals, licensed counselors, doctors, nurses, who could help and assist in the area of helping our members who have mental illness. So during that process, people identified, they know who to call, meaning that they know they can call the imam, they know they can call Sister Catherine and other members on that crisis team. And they can call us and say such and such a need. It's not always their need. The believers will call us and say such and such a need. Can you help them? What is the process? So our process is simply this. They contact one of us, we talk to them, and first of all, we explain to them whatever they share is confidential. We cannot share with anyone else. We will meet them at wherever they want to meet if we need to meet them somewhere and they want to be anonymous to come into the mosque where people wouldn't see them going into the office. But they'll call and say they either need food, clothes, shelter. We've put believers up in hotels for a night until we can find them proper shelter. But what's unique about Detroit is that we have the center of the Muslim Center. And across the street from the Muslim Center, we have Huda Clinic, Health Unit on Davidson Freeway, which is a free clinic for the uninsured and the underinsured. So if a member comes and say they're sick, they don't have insurance, we have an immediate collaboration with our own Muslim brothers and sisters who established that clinic, and I was one of those, to go over to the clinic to get their health taken care of, where they can get dental, eye, general education. And now we have a psychiatrist and case management. We have MSW. So that's a referral immediately at hand. Next door to us, for the believers that attend that need housing, we have Dream of Detroit, who has refurbished the houses down the blocks and around the corner for the Muslims to be able to move in. We have Returning Citizen Home by Dream of Detroit. We have Detroit Muslim Mission been established for over 30 years, where there's housing and food. And for the past 35 years, the Muslim Center has had a soup kitchen every Saturday. It's only closed on Eid. That means we're open for everybody else's holiday, where the community can come. We'll even go pick them up if they need to get there. Get there, get some food. If a family called during the week, we don't have soup kitchen during the week. I simply call the program manager of the soup kitchen. I'm sending their family over. Can you fix me 2 boxes and have it ready when they get there? That's the kind of communication we're doing. So it's word of mouth for us right now. If they come in and they need money, we did establish to try to prevent some fraud that you have to bring in your bills, if it's a light bill, gas bill, and things of that nature. We did limit it 2 years ago, the amount that we give a person, and that limit was $500, because some of the believers came and asked for money. I think I shared this with Sister Shema. They would ask for assistance and say, I want to pay it back. And they would sign that they would pay it back. And then it came to a point where they couldn't pay it back. So we didn't want to hold them to that. So we stopped giving loans. We were trying to give them loans for that. But one of the sisters, she said, I need to pay this back. She needed a car, like Brother Bagby said in the beginning, to get to work. She had just graduated from college. And this is a sister that was 50 years old. So she signed her own. She said, I don't care if y'all take it a lot. She signed her own papers and gave it to our treasurer office. I'm going to pay it back. And wallahi, she paid it back. Alhamdulillah. So some of the believers think that way. I just need a hand up. And we know the economy, the way it is, and how COVID hit the economy. We have so many of the believers and our neighbors who don't have. We collaborate with Michigan Muslim Community Council. I'm on the board of that. They made sure that we had food to give away during the week. Over 10,000 pounds they gave to the Muslim Center and the surrounding communities during the COVID time. And so we had those programs that you have to have collaborations to make it work. Inside the Muslim Center, we found that we had brothers asking for more money than sisters. That was really strange to us. And we said, why? Even a brother asked for $20 for a haircut. Now, what we found out, he needed that haircut to go to an interview. That was important for him to get his hair. He needed to be groomed. So we have to be, as social workers, they call us in to be sensitive. What's the need? Well, because somebody, you want me to get us some money for a haircut? So then that's when we come in and we have to listen to the story and find out why that brother needs a haircut, so he can make it to that interview. He was willing to catch the bus and walk to the interview, but he knew he needed a haircut. So he was given his $20, what he asked for, to go get his haircut. And he bought that $20 back. So it's those kind of things, and word of mouth that gets around. And like you, Sister, we also get a lot of Muslims from other communities coming to the Muslim Center. The Muslim Center is the largest African American mosque in Detroit area. So we get them coming from other mosques because, like you said, if you're not a member, so-called member of another mosque, who can be very affluent. We have mosques around this $2 billion. They got money. They have money. And they'll say, go to the Muslim Center, they'll help you out. And I think a lot that we're there, but that's what they do. That's what they do. And we have people come in from out of town that are sent to us. We have had to put families into emergency care, psych wards. Because the first thing we have to know about, you have children, are they safe? Let's give you food, but it seems like it's more than food you need when you see a family come in and they have all papers and all their luggage. And so you learn to, like the sister said earlier, to identify those who really need and who are fraudulent. And so we have that. Our imam plays a big role. He trusts the crisis team to make decisions about the monies that come through the mosque. And inshallah, we don't, that I know of, have denied anyone of any money. We may not have been able to give them all that they requested, but we have not denied them of any of those monies. One of the things that we do account for, because, you know, even though we're a nonprofit, you still have to account for your money. We do have those members who receive funds from the Muslim Center to sign a voucher, and our financial secretary and or the treasurer will also sign that voucher just to keep our monies, you know, account of our monies. I was talking to Sister Shima and I'm listening to you all. I need your documents to see how you're setting up. We have a community resource book. Because I'm still working in the community, I get a chance to copy the community resource book and bring it to the mosque, sit it there and say, here, this can help our organization. We have Islamic social work organization in Detroit, Michigan. We can send them to the Islamic social work organization to get more counseling and therapy. We can do that. We have Sakina House. It's a domestic violence shelter that the Islamic socialization opened up maybe 7 years ago, where they can go, where the women can go. We don't have it open yet for women and children. We're working on that. But we know everything that we think the outer community needs, we must have it inside our community. Remember, most of us are revert, and we're bringing our baggage, our trauma with us. Yes, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the healing, but it takes time to heal. And in doing that healing, we have to make sure that we're kind, and giving is the most important dawah I think we can do. Our neighbors next to us on the Muslim Center are Christians on both sides of us, but the houses down the streets are now occupied. I think it's about 8 houses occupied by Muslims now down the street. And so we're expanding that community. Down the street from the Huda Clinic, okay, I said we had the Muslim Center, we have the Huda Clinic, and the Huda Clinic has a garden. Every year, the believers can go there and get food free from the garden. And when we don't throw food away, because if there's anything left, it goes to the soup kitchen. So the soup kitchen used that food and cooked meals every Saturday. And we thank Allah for that. We have a sister's closet. We reopen our sister's closet. On Saturday, any member from the outside community or Muslims can come in and get clothing. They need clothing. We have coat drives, boot drives. We have the Day of Dignity. I think you all have heard about the Day of Dignity and some of the other organizations. Once a year, where we give out school supplies, t-shirts, underclothes, everything a person would need to start off before the winter starts in. And so we have that, and we publish that. We publish that. We have Zakat, other than Zakat al-Fitr, that is always available to help the needy in our immediate congregation. We know that there are a lot of domestic violence sometime in our community. We can't ignore that. And finding safe places for our families is quite a chore. It's quite a chore. So we have the Sakina House, but that's only one house. So then we have to help our Muslim brothers and sisters who need to be separated get comfortable with knowing that you can be with a non-Muslim and still be Islamic, that you don't lose your Islam, because we have to ensure that you're protected. When I first became a social worker, one of the issues in our community, and the rest of you may have experienced it, Muslims didn't want to go to Muslims to get therapy because they thought we're going to tell their business around the community. And so they'll wind up going to non-Muslims. We have to get them to understand that our allegiance is to Allah. We bear witness that He is Allah. And when we say we're not going to tell your business, we don't tell your business. That's a big thing that's going around with the believers. And I think our imamship needs to be trained on that. Some of them have gone to trainings. And I know we have in Detroit coming up the Muslim mental health training conference in March this year coming up. But those are the things and the aspects that we do. If a sister needs clothing, it's nothing for a sister calling. And I can tell you, I like to use my own experience. My son was seriously burned the first year of COVID in May 2020. I told one sister to pray, put it on the prayer line, pray. The believers sent money that no one asked for. I mean, we have a large family, but they sent it from their heart. My granddaughter was getting ready. She saw her father on fire. She was getting ready to have her 16th birthday. They sent her gift cards for her birthday. They sent money so the family can buy a stove and a microwave again. That is how we try to share with the believers how we work to help keep us healthy and to help keep our children strong in Islam. That is so important that they see that we give and that they understand that the giver is always on top, always on top. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. And so we have to expand our breasts and open our hearts and give when they ask, but we also know we have to tie the camel, that all of them are not as honest as they should be, and that we do offer budget classes. Detroit Dream just had a budget class maybe a month ago at the Muslim Center, teaching you how to budget. So if they're coming back and they're repeat offenders, I call them repeat offenders, what you doing back here? I talk to them, I'm a realist, and I've been taught to do clarification, not to hurt feelings, but what are you doing back here? Did anybody show you how to make a meal? So we need to teach them how to make meals. That's part of it. And that's part of case management, teaching them how to make meals. I used to be a case management. Teaching them budgeting, how the resources you have, because Michigan has a lot of resources. We have resources where you can go apply for a job 24/7, but some of us don't want it because it's so easy. We're so used to asking for a handout. And so we have to get retrained, unteach and retrain. So all of that I want to say is part of our zakat. All of it is part of helping to bring people up to a better quality of life. And all of it is saying kind words. And I do remind them that once you receive zakat, I say, well, you got zakat, that's good. You know what, we need some volunteers. Can you come volunteer in the soup kitchen? Can you come rake a lawn? Because the Muslim Center don't always have money to pay people for those things that need to be done. So to get them involved, can you go work in the garden for a week or 1 hour a day? So we invite them to bring dignity to themselves. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Wow, Jazakallah khair, Sister Catherine. I'm just, already over an hour. I just feel like my heart is full and inspired just listening to these examples. Like I feel, just what you've said, Sister Catherine, about not just having them passing on the money, but you've dealt with healthcare, housing, food, safety from violence, budgeting, and I like that word. I've never heard it before. Carefrontation rather than confrontation. That's a good word.
Take care of the heart.
Yes. And the feeling that I got from what you said was really, for all of us, I guess the reality is, passing on money, financial assistance, but the overall feeling is that there's a focus on loving and caring for each other in our community. And I think that if we can have that as our guiding principle, we can really expand to help people get what they need, inshallah. Mashallah, jazakallah khair to all of our three panelists for everything you've shared today. I really feel grateful for everything that we've heard. I want to take a few minutes now. We have about half an hour or so left in our presentation today, in our gathering today. What I wanted to do was hear from, by some of the names that I remember from the sign up, I know that we have people joining us from Illinois and Oklahoma. We have Georgia here. And I think some more people from also Michigan as well. If anybody else would like to briefly share any thoughts that they have from what they've heard that links up to their local situation, I would just request that everyone keep their talk to maybe about a minute or so that we all have time to discuss. But if anybody else, I'd like to open the floor to any of our other participants who would like to share something from their local area or ask a question. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a question. I always thought that zakat was only to be given to Muslims. Brother Hassan, can you comment on that?
Yeah, there is a consensus amongst the madhab that zakat only goes to Muslims. So, you know, you talk to somebody who follows the madhab, and that's their opinion. But there are opinions from the early fuqaha that, you know, there are opinions that no, zakat does not have to be restricted to just the Muslims, and there are more and more modern fuqaha who say differently. So Qaradawi's opinion is that the priority should be for Muslims, but not necessarily exclusively for Muslims. There should be an openness to consider non-Muslims. But you know, when you give money, I forget who mentioned, but giving money, I think Sister Bayana or Frieda mentioned giving money for some kind of social service that helps everybody, non-Muslim. You can think of that as mu'allafat qulubahum, because in a sense that is part of the motivation to help people, that their hearts might be softened to Muslims. So there, you know, are ways, and I would say we should be very open to the idea that giving to help non-Muslims is you know, mu'allafat qulubahum, but also just helping poor people in general. But I think it's obvious that, you know, priority is Muslims. I mean, obviously you can't give money to non-Muslims and Muslims suffer.
Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. So Dr. Bagby, you mentioned early on in your presentation that there seems to be a big challenge around zakat going overseas rather than zakat and Sadaqa staying here. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and maybe why is that? What is your concern around that? Tell us a little bit more.
The concern is one that is not how Islam is supposed to work. The Fiqh Sunnah, what's his name, Sayyid Sabiq, gave a nice example that if Muslims are sending money to other areas, sending money abroad to other areas, what do the people of that area think about the Muslims? They think they don't care. They think they're disconnected. But when they see Muslims helping and being involved in their community, then they have a good feeling. And that's the wisdom or the purpose of why zakat is supposed to stay in the area. I think it is a function mainly of first-generation immigrants who just feel a more intense connection with what's going on overseas. Now, there's nothing wrong with giving money. in fact, I support it, right? But the problem is that somebody after I gave a talk, something about something like this, came up and said, well, why should I give money to anybody here in America? I mean, the Muslims abroad are the ones who need it. See, that's the mentality we don't need. That the priority is Muslims abroad. Yes, we should be given to Muslims abroad, but that is ultimately not our priority. Our priority is to build our American Muslim community and not forget about overseas. But our community gives priority to Muslims abroad, and that needs to change. It needs to be a much more healthy balance between money that stays here. I don't know, 60-40, 60 stays here, 40 goes abroad. I don't know. But right now, I think we have a very unhealthy balance where the vast majority goes abroad.
I mean, why couldn't we just ask that Zakat be given priority to the Muslims and Sadaqa be given overseas? I mean,
that's one way to think of it, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bagby. I had a question for Auntie Frieda also. You mentioned about there seems to be more fraud during Ramadan. And you coming from Brooklyn, you can recognize it, but the question being, what happens during Ramadan? Why would there be more, or is it just because more people, I don't know. That's the question I'm asking. What happened? What's happening during Ramadan?
Well, my feeling is that we tend as believers to be more giving in Ramadan. So if we're more giving, that means there's more to be given. And so it's, like, what do you say? It's a double-edged sword. We give more and people ask for more, but there just seems to be in Ramadan an increase in asking, and not always for legitimate reasons,
I
I have
agree.
a question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree with Sister Frieda, because even at the Muslim Center, the believers that come through, and because we all have the opportunity to go to different mosques, we can see that they are visiting mosques. Just like you go to a bank, they go to bank and take money, they'll go to each mosque because their thinking is, it's Ramadan, they're gonna give me money. They're gonna give me money. Unless you know someone to stop that, then it happens. It happens, and it's the month of Ramadan, and they shouldn't be denied fi sabilillah. And that's what we get. That's what we get.
Thank you, Sister
Yes, sister,
Catherine.
I wanted to
Nadia,
ask you, what kind of a database were you talking about? Like, is this a joint effort with other masajid you have, where you're seeing that people are going from one masjid to other masjid, and how do you go about it?
So there was someone who decided to make a whole database, an engineer. And so he put together a whole platform that we use.
Okay.
And that's where the database is. And those masajids and organizations who wanted to be a part of it, and there are like 7 of them, decided to do that. So when the person applies, the first page has a place where you can say which masajid you want to apply to. And you're
Okay.
supposed to pick one.
Mm.
A lot of people don't pick one, they pick a lot of them. So when you go to that person's file, you click on that person in a different portion of the database, and you can see that they applied to all these different masajids. And then you can reject them.
Mm. Okay.
And then their email is there, and you say, listen, you were supposed to apply to 1, you applied to 3, blah, 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 So we communicate with them that way. Their phone number is there, what their need is. There's a paragraph where they write what their need is and why. Some people say I've been unemployed, and then they upload the letters of unemployment and the dates, etc. I mean, so there's a way to check all of this. It takes a lot of time, though. We
Right.
try to make the turnaround 48 to 72 hours, but sometimes it takes a while to get them to send all the information, etc. It's a huge thing. It's a
Hmm.
huge thing, but it's really been helpful. It's been
Yeah.
Such
We're
a
just going through the
centralized.
process.
Oh,
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying we're doing a similar process, but I'm trying to learn from others what they're doing and how they're going through their process.
Mhm. Okay.
I was just going to say that this is a very valuable example of what we could all learn from, because centralized databases for Zakat is needed throughout the country, no question. I don't know how ISSA can help this process of, making templates available or talking about it amongst the various communities, but it is absolutely needed. And everybody sees the need, so it's not like you have to convince anybody that why do we need this? No, everybody understands the need. A good template would be helpful for all the cities.
That's what they're doing now in Michigan. In Michigan, you have the food bank, you have Focus Hope, you have WIC, you have other food banks, and they can see who goes through the food bank, because you're only supposed to go once a month. So your name will appear. And some people don't know that when you sign up and you give your social security number and your phone numbers, it pops up. And so that's the same system that the government is using as well, because people are just going from each organization and then they selling it. They sell the goods. All of them don't need the food. I see a hand up, Sister Tahira Khalid.
Assalamu alaikum, family. I see my family, Brother Ihsan, Sister Catherine.
Sister Tahira, mashallah.
Yeah, sweetheart. Just beautiful, Sister Nisa. Just so beautiful to see your beautiful faces, beautiful presentation. Sit on the board to help develop the Muslim Family Services. Is located in IGNA, part of IGNA Relief. And we have had to strategize in terms of our giving. We have quite a bit of money that comes in. And because we did see fraud and repeat applications and requests that we knew that were not always consistent with legitimacy, we know we're responsible to Allah for the money we get and how we distribute it. So we have now, after especially after Ramadan, the Eid after Ramadan, we make the priority the Muslim families. And they have to come in with the birth certificates of the children. They have to come in with their social security number. And they have to answer a question about Islam. And some people have been upset about that. But I mean, if you don't know how many prayers there are to pray, I mean, they're very simple questions. You have a problem, but we're developing databases for that very reason, because there is quite a bit of money. There's a food bank there, and we're known now to give a family receives money based on the size of the family. So if you have 4 or 5 children, you get a check up to $500, $600. But we are now based out of IGNA in New York, across the country. They're asking us for documentation to justify the distribution of the money. And I think it's fair, because that means more people who really need that money can access it. And so as we become more technologically savvy, we will see ways to make sure that the money is distributed fairly. And it's a good discussion to have. And with the money, Sister Catherine was speaking about our domestic violence shelter. We do have room now for mothers and children, just because we have been able to construct a program having utilized our money. And every year we have an annual banquet. We show the citizens, the community, the Muslims, the believers, what we've done with every dime. We have a graph and we show them where every dime went. So we haven't had a problem at this point, but we do have to become savvy, because any society has its number of people who are, as you say, hustlers. This is their mindset, and they feel if it's there, they are deserving of it. But we've made it very clear that the Eid after Ramadan is particularly for the Muslims, which answers Sister Amina's question. Now, you can receive food, you can receive help, but you will not get the huge check for your family if you're not Muslim. And I know there might be some controversy on that, but we pretty much stuck with that for the last 4 or 5 years.
Thank you, Sister Tahira, for that. Sorry, Dr. Anisa, you were saying something?
I'm doing it.
By the way,
Sister-
Zakat al-Fitr is for Muslims only. So
Only, right. Mhm,
that's a
yes,
consensus, Zakat al-Fitr
right.
is Muslims.
Okay, only Muslims, yes.
Yeah, but not necessarily Zakat.
No, you're right. Eid is for the
That's
Muslims,
Not
yes,
always a position.
right.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair for that. I think that's interesting. The last few comments, I really understood that we do need social workers and therapists,
Mhm,
but that was
yeah.
interesting that we have, other people, for example, the engineer who was able to
Right.
design the database. We need people from so
Mhm,
many different,
Right.
expertise areas
Right.
to address this issue. Yeah. So Sister Tahira, if you could, I didn't understand fully. So I see you're based in Michigan, but do you
Yes.
work at a national level as well with ICNA, or are you focusing your Sadaqa directly in the Michigan area? Could you elaborate a little bit?
I'm a clinical therapist for the Muslim Family Services, so that's my expertise. But I'm on the board and one of the founders of Muslim Family Services. So I have other responsibilities. That's just something that my heart has been committed to. But my role is as a clinical therapist, and we're getting more and more families and individuals who are willing now to receive therapeutic intervention as we destigmatize it, and let them know. And then Sister Catherine says we're bound by HIPAA law that we would have to obey that. First of all, we have to obey what Allah has given us, but we would be very clear that HIPAA law, we cannot share their information as they see that their information has been protected. Really and truly, I get a call, 2 or 3 calls a day. We don't even have the capacity to meet the need. And so some of my work, I'm adjunct professor at Wayne State. I'm really trying to get more Muslims, especially Muslim brothers, to consider the field. I trained one Muslim brother. He has so many offers from families to go into the schools, to go into the hospital, just because he is a Muslim brother with the credentials. And in Michigan, they're very serious about you having licensed credentials in order to practice. So we got that brother through the exam, the hours, the tests, and he's doing very well. But I really need to work. We need to work more thoroughly. And I heard one of the imams say at the masjids, we're training our children to be doctors and lawyers and engineers, but we need teachers and we need therapists. We need everyone, so some of our focus, and I've had some of the children tell me, some of the students at the different masjids, particularly, and I love Canton, their parents pretty much don't even want them to consider a profession outside of medicine, when many times they would like to consider. So I know some of that's cultural, but we really need to diversify our educational offers for our children and our families, for our individuals. I mean, we need Muslims. I have so many calls. Sister Tahira, can you find me a therapist? Can you provide counseling? Can you find a brother for my son? And I says, not that a sister can't do the counseling, but I know you would rather have a Muslim brother, because we know, I work in the real world. We know the attitudes toward Muslims, even in some of the professional fields, that if you're Muslim, there's something underlying that's wrong with you. And we don't want to submit someone to that thought. So we're doing a lot of training too at the different universities and different systems to let them really know, because a lot of people are really still being programmed to believe that Islam is some radical, it's hard to believe, but many people, I taught a class at Wayne State, and I had beautiful Dr. Cheryl Alameen that summer before she passed come in and speak about Rahimullah, Allah have mercy on her, about Islam and what it means. And Dr. Anisa used to do that. You still do that, Sister Anisa? Dr. Anisa, you and Cheryl would put that beautiful program together. And so many of my students were saying, oh my goodness, we didn't know how blind we were. I have a friend who's a professor at U of M, and she would have me bring a team of Muslim women in to let people know how much we do contribute to the society. And she would have them write an analysis of how they felt after we finished presenting. And so many of the students, she would read their analysis after we presented, and they said, we did not know how blind we were about Islam. We did not realize how blind we were about Muslim women, you know, because I usually take an engineer, a doctor, and, you know, a person with basic commitment to society. You don't have to be credentialed to be a good Muslim, but they have no idea of how much benefit we do bring to the society. So we need to get on the various platforms and let people know about our contributions to any society, but particularly to this society.
Yes, Jazakallah khair, Sister Tahira. And
SubhanAllah.
I would also, inshallah, this is another of the goals of
Yes.
ISSA, that we bring together people who can, you know, have more, you know, experience to share with others about
Right.
the importance of these different social service careers.
Yes.
Social workers, psychologists, Muslim
Mhm.
marriage and family therapists, all of these to broaden, you know, the accessible careers for our community. And also another thing is to, you know, make a database of, you know, different therapists from across the country.
Exactly. Yes.
Inshallah. So those are two more of the goals of ISSA, inshallah. Dr.
SubhanAllah.
Nadir, did you want to add anything to that?
I do, but before I do, I want to see, Sister Nadia is the one that kind of inspired this. I want to see before I go further if there's any more questions that she might have. Sister Nadia.
I'm intrigued with all this information, alhamdulillah, and very thankful, inshallah, going to, you know, share it with others, all with our imam and our executive director. And basically, mashallah, you know, I'm also, it gives me relief that what we are doing and the steps that we are taking, it is similar to the pathway that you guys are doing. So we do take first come first applications and looking at the funding. So our policy is we distribute the zakat first. That's our immediate, you know, responsibility, that where we're not sure if it's a Muslim, then we, you know, get the funds from our Sadaqa account, and where we're sure, then, you know, we're using the zakat money. So by the end of Ramadan, 1 year to the other year, alhamdulillah, we're almost done with all our funds. And we have, you know, leftover, we have more of Sadaqa money, which we keep on using and ongoing. Alhamdulillah, policy is that we don't deny anybody. We try and accommodate everybody, even if it's a non-Muslim, for dawah's sake, that, you know, they feel and they come closer to the Muslim community. I have a really nice success story that we had a new convert. He transferred from, you know, he lost his family when he converted and moved to Atlanta. And the California Masjid, you know, they introduced him to us, and alhamdulillah, then COVID hit and he had, you know, a lot of struggles, but then he got the job. We almost supported him for 2 years. Then he got a really good job. We bought him a car, and now he's on his own. So that way, you know, I was with him there. He would share his struggles. He would have suicidal thoughts. He would, you know, want to say that I have shaitan who whispers, and, you know, I don't know if it's, I said, it's your test, you know, you're going through a test, and just stay steady. Allah will show you the path. And, you know, as a community, we supported him through his struggle. That was one of the, you know, most long, you know, person who we sustained through 2.5 years. But alhamdulillah, it's good to see him on his feet now. So there are people that you have to stay with them, but then there are people who you see that they're taking advantage of you now, that they can do more, but they're not doing it. There are people who are hesitant in the beginning, but once they start receiving the funds, somehow they become like, you know, they're more dependent on the masjid, and then you want them to do more and struggle a little bit. and work hard and get it. Because if they're not finding a good job, they can always go and look for an hourly job. They can do something online. There are so many other areas where they can push themselves a little bit. So inshallah, there's a lot to be done. We need to work hard on it. And it's just that, I struggle with it because I'm a soft-hearted person. I can't see people going through a hardship and pushing them or denying their application. We also have like 4 or 5 team members who go through the applications, and then and we decide on how much funding we can give them. So inshallah, after this, if you guys can use your resources or share with Sister Shema, that would be really helpful, that we can use with each other and have more of these sessions that we can, carry on and kind of learn from each other.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for sharing that example, Sister Nadia. We are intending that this webinar is only the beginning of our collaboration, inshallah. What I'd like to do is pass on to all of you, apart from the webinar recording, I have when you fill out the application, all of you sent the email address, or not the email address, but the website of your local masajid. So if we can all have that as well on the list, we can each look at each other's assessment forms and get ideas from that. So let's see how we can coordinate and maybe share emails as well afterwards. We won't be sending them out without your consent, but if you all consent, we can share each other's emails so that you all can further ask questions and further coordinate, inshallah. So we'll have those things coming up. Dr. Nader, would you like to add anything?
Yes. Assalamu alaikum. I am just, I'm amazed. This was really great. So I want to thank you, Shema, for encouraging us to do this webinar. This isn't a webinar that ISSA's done before. Though ISSA has been concerned from the beginning around social service, social welfare, financial matters, as food, insecurity, homelessness. These are issues that ISSA has been concerned about from the beginning of ISSA, as well as, of course, the mental health concerns. And we've been concerned about, how do we address these issues around helping people to be more financially sustained, more financially self-sufficient. And the combination of the speakers that we had, I believe this was a divinely ordained panel because we were like struggling because we never did this before. We didn't know exactly how to do it. I just think Allah put this panel together. Each and every one of you, Dr. Bagby, Auntie Frieda, Sister Catherine, and then Sister Baina coming on and joining us. And I mean, mashallah, I think, and Sister Tahira, I mean, this is amazing because this is a long overdue conversation. And usually, and I said in my, like little write-up on Facebook and stuff, normally when we hear Zakat and Sadaqa, we think of the thick only, but we don't talk about the practicality, the real life issues, the everyday concerns. Like, people are struggling. People don't have the financial resources that they need to eat, to get to work, to take care of their babies, to buy Pampers. I mean, and food stamps does not pay to get married. Food stamps doesn't pay for a hygiene product. It doesn't pay for feminine diapers, products or diapers or any of those things. I mean, so mashallah. And people who are formerly incarcerated, Dr. Bag, thank you. I know Sister Baina was shaking her head. Thank you for bringing that up. We have brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, and we want to support. I mean, we say we want to support them. They come out with fines, they come out with different issues, they come out with a family that now they want to reunite with, and they don't have means. And so how do we help them? So I'm just really I am so appreciative and so grateful that Allah put us all together. And I think that we need to certainly move this forward. As Dr. Bagby said, I don't know if ISSA can. I don't know if ISSA can either. I don't know what next steps we can do, but I think if this is important enough for us to continue the conversation and for us to know like how, I don't know about putting a template or, I don't know about these things. I'm on the referral side. I'm on the side of the folks who get the message that a sister needs housing or a family doesn't have enough money to pay rent. I'm on that side. I'm not on the side that has the money. I'm on the side of the people that says, I need the money. And so I go find the people who have the money, whether it's the masjid or the individuals or whatever. But we need to put our heads together. Things are starting to happen. Like 20 years ago, this conversation would not have been held, even maybe 10 years ago. Right now, the United States as a whole and globally, we are in what are we dealing with? Inflation, and they're concerned about a recession. That's affecting the whole nation. And we know that when that happens, those who are low income, those who are minority members of the community, experience that financial concern at an even greater rate.
That's right.
And it impacts their family life, their divorce rate, their mental health, because they're worried about how they're going to take care. So I don't know, but I would appreciate to hear about some next steps, like Dr. Bagby, like maybe you can list 1, 2, 3 things that should be done next. Like, what are some next steps? What should we, maybe even as a small group, we're a small enough group here, maybe together we want to maintain that. Maybe Shema can pull us together again. I don't know, but please tell us what you think should be next steps. If you, or any of you who think this is 1, 2, 3, this is what we should do next. And thank you so much. Thank you. May Allah reward you and your families for taking out the time to be here today.
MashaAllah.
Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Anisa. I know that she did mention Dr. Bagby to give us that 1, 2, 3 list to decide for all of us. I don't know if you'd like to start off with your thoughts.
Well, I would say this circle needs to be expanded.
Yes.
And we need some champions who are going to, make this whole issue of the zakat in our community a priority. There is a need for workshops in cities. For instance, just the whole idea of a central database. I think there are very few cities that have a central database. And a workshop that would go into, say, Miami and, do such a workshop would be very valuable. Workshops to convince these suburban masjids they need to put their zakat money to pay for a caseworker. That's ridiculous that you have all this zakat money and you have nobody paying attention to, zakat applicants who have multiple issues that need somebody to help them, to guide them, money for mental health counseling. So, zakat should be used for issues like that. And many communities think that no, zakat has to be used only to give, to pay for a bill or something like that. We need a expanded vision of what zakat is.
Exactly.
And I think the only way to do it is to have workshops in cities where you can hopefully have key decision makers around a table. So anyway, that's some of the things that come off the top of my head.
Thank you, Dr. Bagby. I think, these are all, we should really take advantage of the technology as we've done today with this Zoom call, bringing together all of you from across the country who we wouldn't have been able to meet in one room together so easily.
Exactly.
But alhamdulillah, this technology enables us. And the same with database. That's the new technology, how to manage information. And if we can do that fi sabilillah to benefit our community, then that's best. And I just remembered what you said just now, like the zakat money to pay for a caseworker. And I remember when you were at the beginning talking about the different categories of what zakat can be used for. One of them was money to pay those who are distributing the zakat. Is that right, what you said? So in a way, I mean, that would be example of a salary for a caseworker who's distributing the zakat. So it's in our guidance from the beginning. I guess I think that just as we summarize in the last 5-10 minutes, I guess the idea that I've come from hearing everybody today is that, we started off saying, oh, here's the masjid, here's this one door through which people pay money, put money in the box for zakat, there's a sadaqa box, a zakat box, and then the money goes out, there's one person giving it out. But then, through hearing about all the different ways the zakat is being distributed and money is being distributed and services, we really see that there's an expanded role. So I guess the question that I have is, what is the role of the masjid as opposed to these, for example, Sister Catherine was talking about Detroit, that you have the Huda, free clinic, and you've got the community garden next door, and they're all like nearby geographically and in coordination, but they're all independent organizations. So I can imagine, like Sister Nadia, when I was listening to you, I was thinking, wow, like the masjid has a lot of pressure on its shoulders to be doing all of this, for everybody coming in, that, case management for over 2 years with that one brother that you said. Now, I guess the question that I have now for us to think about is, what is the role of the masjid as an organization doing all this versus what is the role of the masjid having coordination with these other organizations that are focused on, the job training, a different organization for housing. Then you have, how do you manage that with this zakat and sadaqa money itself?
For us, like if we have a counselor, what we've done before, we'll assign a person who we think needs counseling, then we'll assign sessions with the counselor, and then we pay for the sessions. So that person, their confidentiality and their issues, they go discuss with the counselor, and the counselor will send us the invoice. Same way, if there's a domestic violence issue, there's Noor Family Services in our area, we'll, forward the case, and we give a portion of our funds every month to Noor Family Services. So then we'll send some cases towards them. So that's how we're working right now. We work with ICNA also. So they have some shelters, and then they'll provide, temporary shelter for women or children, and then find them housing. And there's New American Pathways over here. They are, when the refugees are coming, they're finding them housing. They're not a Muslim organization, but a nonprofit. But we've specified there's some Muslim volunteers over there, and they know that this is Roswell Community Masjid sending over funds for just zakat eligible people. So that's how we're kind of, partnering with other organizations. And, it's just within Atlanta right now. We're just focused on our city, and we help other communities, other masajid that way also. If anybody's coming, we don't say, okay. But if it's another city, then it's hard, unless that special case that the LA masjid contacted us, and then, we assisted this brother with, because he moved to Atlanta. So that's how we're kind of working. But definitely I want more resources that we can have on our website, list everybody, like, we have a counselor, we have a person who can help somebody build their resume. And because mashallah, we have doctors, we have engineers, we have lawyers, we have all these people coming to the masjid. We have the resources, we have the volunteers. It's just putting them in touch with them. And, same way, a social worker, a caseworker. So educate them in these areas that we can help them build their lives better, because, there are Muslim brothers, and, we want to help our sisters and our brothers and the next generation, because the next generation is somebody, we want to focus on, that they're strong Muslims. They don't have these health issues or these mental issues, because there's so much every person I work with or I talk to, when I look back into their past, there is some mental trauma there, and
Yes.
that's having an issue, or they're struggling and they can't think right at some point, that they can't make decisions on their behalf, on their own. They need somebody just clearing their thoughts, like we're clearing our thoughts today through this thought process. So it would be really helpful if we can help each other, even looking at each other's forms or websites, and seeing how our forms can be, like our forms have, that they can attach their bills on there. We have a social services email, we have a social services helpline. So things like that, because somehow we want to hide our identities, because when applicants have our personal phone numbers, they'll kind of, keep a tab on you, and then they'll start calling you. And sometimes, being, a woman, I don't feel comfortable meeting somebody in person. I want to meet them at the masjid office, having the imam and my office manager, 3 people at least, there to interview. I'm not very comfortable meeting because we don't know who that person is. So things like that, day-to-day challenges.
Yes, thank you, Sister Nadia.
Assalamualaikum. I know that we're winding down.
Yes.
But I must give you this information. The Muslim Center has great collaborations. The Huda Clinic started at the Muslim Center, inside the Muslim Center. Dream started inside the Muslim Center and still has an office in the Muslim Center. Detroit Muslim Mission started inside the Muslim Center. Michigan Muslim Community Council started inside the Muslim Center and expanded out. So these are still collaborations that we have. So we work together in health fairs, and supporting each other in fundraising and addressing the needs of individuals. Now, we can do better with, what I'll say, documentation referrals, that kind of way, but we have an end where we can call and get the kind of support that we really do need. The Muslim Center connection with Islamic Social Services in Detroit is a great connection. Sister here just spoke about them. And so we have that connection. We still have the issue of a cultural issue. I don't want to go to them because they're a different culture or whatever the case may be. So we have to overcome still some of those barriers. But as far as collaborations, I think the most important thing we need to do is to collaborate, design a program where we can get in touch with each other just by a push of a button, but to collaborate around in your community. And where the believers live around that mosque, and outside of the mosque, because I don't live in Detroit anymore. I live far out, but my home is Detroit. That's where I was born and raised, but I live outside of Detroit now. But my concern is the families in Detroit. I have children still in Detroit. And so that collaboration is just so awesome. And to make sure that we're seen. Sometimes we talk about collaborations, but we have to be seen working together. I think that's the visual piece is so very important, that people know that we're working together. We're not working outside of each other, even though we're different .orgs, but we're still collaborating together.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Catherine. And I think hopefully this webinar is an example of how, Muslims from all different backgrounds can work together, for this common purpose. Just as we're wrapping up in our last 2 minutes, Auntie Frieda, do you have any last one or two words or 1 or 2 sentences you'd like to say, given everything you've heard today? Oh, sorry, Auntie Frieda, if you could just unmute yourself.
I don't have anything to offer. I'm just grateful to be in the presence of all of you, contributing so much in your community. I've learned so much here today. And it's one thing I always say, every day that you wake up is a day you could learn something, and us being able to share that with each other is alhamdulillah.
Benefit. Jazakallah khair, Auntie Frieda, for that. And Dr. Ihsan Bagby, would you like any last sentence you can share with us before we close up?
Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
Yes. That's definitely a comprehensive, alhamdulillah. Yes. Jazakallah khair. So I'll just say that we would love to be in touch with all of you by email as a follow-up to this webinar, the recording, as well as further thoughts about coordinating and sharing our thoughts with each other. Jazakumullah khair to our three panelists, Dr. Ihsan Bagby, Auntie Frieda Muwakkil, and Sister Catherine Ziyad for sharing your experiences, and all of our attendees as well for sharing your local thoughts. Inshallah, may Allah make this task that we have, this heavy task, easier for us, and guided by the knowledge that all of our sisters and brothers have gained from across the country. I'll just end with Surah Al-Asr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر, by the token of time through the ages. إن الإنسان لفي خسر, verily man is in loss. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر, except such as have faith and do righteous deeds and join together in the mutual teaching of truth and of patience and constancy. Ameen. Jazakumullah khair, everybody, for joining us today.
May Allah bless everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So good to see your beautiful face. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.